As the 2021 Organization Development Network Board Chair, I am excited to be announcing and awarding our first Elevating Humanity Award to Dr. Otto Scharmer, Senior Lecturer at the MIT Sloan School of Management, author of Theory U, and founder of the Presencing Institute. Here's a little more on how this award, so critical for the times we live in, came to be. Many of you know that the field of organization development originated in the late 1960s as a counter-movement against the traditional command and control, profit-centered management approach. Dr. Scharmer has championed the same counter-movement by bringing humanity back into focus with Theory U and then elevating humankind on a global scale through the Presencing Institute's collective effort to help oppressed, marginalized, impoverished, and fractured populations. The Institute, which was founded in 2006, is described as an action research platform at the intersection of science, consciousness, and profound social and organizational change. Over the last 20 years, this institute has trained thousands of organizations around the world to address what it describes as our most pressing global challenges, such as climate change, food systems, inequity and exclusion, finance, healthcare, and education. Thanks to the work of Dr. Scharmer and his team, we know that this can be accomplished by helping individuals tap into the dimensions of consciousness that have atrophied since the Industrial Revolution, namely mindful and intuitive forms of awareness that stimulate insight around what must emerge in the future as a process called presencing, a combination of the words sensing and presence. Dr. Brendel, a board member of the Organization Development Network, comments that presencing is a process that involves expanding awareness beyond ego and conventional knowledge in the name of genuine inclusion and innovation. Otto has made this approach clear, transparent, and actionable through the Theory U framework, which invites breathtaking perspective, insight, and transformative change. He also shares much of his work and toolkits freely, humbly, and with a global impact that is almost impossible to quantify. I cannot agree more with Dr. Brendel, having been one of those users of the many tools that are available through the Theory U website. Thank you so much, Dr. Otto Scharmer. And it is my great honor in this year in particular, as we celebrate a hopeful outlook for the world at this conference where we are discussing evolving with impact. The future is now, that I get to present to you our inaugural Elevating Humanity Awards. Before I invite you to accept, I would like you to, and all of us, to take a pause and listen to these further words and celebrations that are coming to you as you receive this world from many folks who want to also say congratulations.
Hello, Otto, and many, many congratulations. I can't think of anyone who more deserves this award because as I've known you over the years, I have come to believe that not only are you one of the important theoreticians and practitioners who has brought us this far in the social science of humanization, but more importantly, I really believe you are our best hope for the future. Now, why would I say this? I say it because you represent a unique combination of, as you yourself would put it, head, heart, and will. and at the same time, a person who has deliberately and consciously worked across both technical cultures and social cultures, and made it bell clear that working in either one of these alone just does not get us anywhere. So the thing that I most admire about you, and that I think will produce great results in the future, is if you continue to be a kind of integrator of both the intellectual side and the emotional side, and most importantly, the action side, what we will actually do, what our will tell us to do. And I think this is now especially important because the environmental problem of global warming, I think, is very serious. And unless humanity figures out a different way to think, talk, and act about it, we will indeed fry together on a hot planet. So I'm counting on you to help us change our consciousness, our feelings, and our actions to keep us alive on this wonderful planet. And once again, congratulations. And I'm so proud that you are continuing to work on this. All the best, Otto.
So it's really a delight to be able to add this comment, Otto, to this special occasion. I can really not think of anyone who would be more deserving of this unique new award that you're receiving. It's also, of course, a delight to be part of the company. You know, the company is very important, and the company we keep, so to speak, and having Ed be part of this, who has, of course, been such an important mentor and guide to both of us, is kind of illustrative of that company. So we've known each other a long time. I'm guessing now we're certainly up to getting close to 30 years. Isn't that interesting? Because it was in the early to mid 90s, I can't remember exactly the year, that you suddenly showed up at MIT. And it didn't take us long to connect and for you to start to really fold into all the different things that were starting to emerge at that time. It's interesting to use the word emergence with a 30-year retrospective, but it's exactly right. You started working, of course, with Joseph Jaworski, and eventually we started working more and more closely. I think we're at a point now where, kind of like an old married couple, you can't see where one ends and the other begins. The entwinement just keeps getting deeper and richer. So I am really happy that you're receiving this award. As my kind of preparation for it, I spent a little time looking at the Global Forum website for the new Global Forum that's coming up in just 2 weeks from now, which is a beautiful example of the amazing work that you and the entire Presencing Institute community are doing. It is really a touchstone for all of us in the direct engagement of people around the world, around thinking and bringing into existence a new way of being in the world. So congratulations. I couldn't be happier for you. And I'm really pleased that I could get my little 2 cents worth in here.
Otto, this is Dave Jameson, and I want to congratulate you as the first recipient of the Elevating Humanity Award at the OD Network. Your work has been significant with a lot of impact for many, many years, and it's particularly interesting to see both where and how you've been applying your work and your concepts. The importance of the role of humanity in systems work, and especially in change work, has come forward from all the work you and your Presencing Institute have done. And I think that's most critical today with our wicked and challenging problems that we need to face. And your methodologies seem to help that a lot. I also want to recognize you for making presence more better understood and more accessible to more people. I have been working for years on making sense of the use of self concept, and we've made presence as a very critical element in how well people take in data and how well people show up as their best selves. So I appreciate what you've done with that and how we've tried to adapt that into our use of self work. So I wish you the best in the future, and thank you for contributing and being the first recipient of this award.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Otto. What a wonderful, wonderful day, right? And I just have to say, it's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to congratulate you and your team for the recognition of your contribution to our field of organization development. And by the way, I'm Peter Sorensen from Benedictine University, and it's really good to be with you. But you know, I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate the OD Network for creation of this new award. It is, I believe, symbolic of the central role that the OD Network has always played in constructive organization change. You and your team, Otto, you and your team, of course, are special. But to be the first recipient of this new award makes you and your team extra, extra special. I hope that someday I will have the chance to meet this extra, extra special person in person. To that day. And again, congratulations to you and your team. Take care, stay healthy.
Hey, Otto, John Scherer calling you from Warsaw, Poland. I got to tell you, I don't think we might have met and shaken hands, but I don't feel like I really know you. But boy, I really know and appreciate your model. One of your colleagues from Ottawa, Canada, Jean Ogilvy, who is really steeped in your work. She's one of the senior facilitators in our international network. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I was looking at turning my own organization. Do I stay with this? Do I leave? I'm in Poland. Do I come back to America? What do I do? And Jean said, Theory U, we got to use Theory U. So she came, and we had an international group of about 8 or 10 of my facilitators from different countries. And she facilitated a process using your Theory U. And it was just absolutely fabulous. So I feel like I know you. I think people that get to use that model know something about who you are. So God bless you, brother. I'm really glad that you channeled that or got it wherever you got it. And I hope you have a fabulous, fabulous time there, and congratulations.
Congratulations, Otto Scharmer. When I look at the purpose of the Elevating Humanities Award, it strides to the very soul, the very roots of OD in the way that it was originally conceived. And for that reason, I commend this committee for creating this category of recognition. I also commend the committee for selecting you, Otto, as the inaugural recipient. I think by doing so, they have anchored the importance of this award going forward. I first met you in 2005 or 2006 at the Shambhala Leadership Institute in Nova Scotia. Do you remember those days? At that time, you were just cultivating the seeds of the blind spot. And over these past 15 years, I have followed your work, and I have greatly appreciated your attention to the interior condition of anyone who would lead change or be a part of a change initiative. I think that's so important, especially your attention to that inner will to act, which I just think is important. So I've also appreciated the congruence that you have demonstrated between your scholarly works, that is your books and your presentations, and the inclusive and generous way that you have engaged such a large network of collaborators and partners who are tailoring your concepts to the realities of different contexts around the world. That is indeed a global reach, and I think it is a sustainable global reach. I have liked your attention to the larger societal level because I realize that Theory U also works at the most intimate level. So at the societal level, I like that you have addressed some of the most wicked and some of the most promising issues as we go into the future. So Otto, it is my pleasure to be able to congratulate you and to wish you the very best going forward in the future. That is personally and professionally.
I'm thrilled to have been asked to speak to you on this fabulous occasion inaugurating this Elevation of Humanity Award. And what I know of your work, I run into it sometimes when I am working with leaders of different communities who want to make a change in that community. And the people who come to those gatherings have been inspired, on fire, and ready to make a positive difference. In fact, one of the things that I'm most honored to be able to say congratulations to you about is the fact that you are really matching, I think, the spirit and soul of organization development and applied behavioral science being applied to changing organizations and helping organizations and communities develop. Because it's all about making the world a better place. It's all about creating a just and equitable society. It's all about productivity and high performance in whatever we do. And your work's been applied for everything from organizational change to leadership development to food for people who are hungry, people who are living on the margins. And if we think about where this work came from, and some of the work in post-World War II is really about reaching everyone and creating and sponsoring and fostering democratic principles and the development of human consciousness to its highest potential, and using groups to do that. Well, I think your work at the intersection of applied behavioral science and consciousness and leadership and science is just phenomenal. And I applaud you. I applaud you for reminding us why we're in this work. I do work in transformation for communities, leaders, and organizations, and that's why I'm in this work. And it's wonderful to elevate that spirit of who we are as we work in organizations to help them be more effective, as we work with communities to help them be more joyful, revitalized, and harmonious, and socially just. As we do all of this work, we don't have to preoccupy ourselves with what is OD, we just preoccupy ourselves with making a better society. And kudos to you for being right there on the leading edge of that work, elevating humanity and who we really have the potential to be. I'm so excited to be a part of honoring you and celebrating you and all those who are at that leading edge. Congratulations.
Otto, this is David Sibbett from the West Coast calling to congratulate you on your Elevating Humanity Award. I must say that the work you've done with Theory U and the Presencing Institute have had a very big impact on our work at the Grove Consultants and the Global Learning and Exchange Network. And we're very appreciative of your continuing to advance these ideas. Congratulations.
Hi, Otto. it's Sandra Janoff. We haven't met, but we are fellow travelers. I want to congratulate you on this wonderful award. We're in the midst of unprecedented global crises, and I honor you for the role you are playing. Otto, please consider me and my colleagues in the Future Search Network as partners in believing and working toward wholeness. I look forward to our meeting someday and sharing stories and hopes and a glass of wine. Enjoy your day. I'm sure the sun is shining.
My name's Matt Minahan, a longtime member and a former board chair of the network, and I'm just calling to congratulate you, Otto, and congratulate the network on finding exactly the right person to receive this award. I first learned of your work 10 or 15 years ago. One of your graduates, Diane Hetherington, and I were teaching together a use of self course in the OD program at Johns Hopkins University. And Diane said to me, we've got to teach these students something about presencing. This guy, Otto Scharmer, is onto something. Trying to be funny, I said something like, well, if we teach them about presencing, we need to teach them about absencing too. And Diane laughed and said, well, that's part of it as well. More recently, I've been studying with David Sivit and Mary Gelinas, who are big proponents of your work, especially on the work in the social field. And of course, your work on consciousness raising, comes right back to, the old saying, you must be the change you want to see. And your work on that takes that to a whole nother level. Also, I didn't realize at the time that you're the source of one of the concepts that has worked best for me in my work with leadership teams for a long time. The idea of the highest future potential always lights up leadership teams and helps them get past where they're stuck and helps them coalesce around important concepts that they're willing to commit to. It really lights up the work and enables their work. And I want to thank you for that concept and just let you know I've been using it with credit for a number of years. It's a privilege to know you through your work, Otto, and your generosity with the ULab and also from ego to eco. I love the way you think and believe you're exactly the right person to receive this first Elevating Humanity Award from the OD Network.
Hello, Otto, and congratulations on this award. I'm so happy and proud for you and know that you deserve this through and through, especially because you're just one of the humblest people that I have ever known, maybe the humblest. And I know that you don't work for awards. And all these years that we've been able to collaborate together, I know the late nights we've put in and the toil of the soil. And I know how much you care about elevating humanity and improving society for the well-being of all and for the planet. And I'm just really delighted that others are recognizing your hard work and your efforts all these years. So enjoy this wonderful achievement and know that we celebrate you and we will celebrate together.
Dear Otto, big congratulations on this award you're receiving today. It's been such, and it continues to be such an exciting journey to work on your team and to be inspired daily by your passion, your creativity, and your leadership. And I'd like to say also that I have learned from you what it means to be in service of, and that's the highest form of leadership that I have come across. And I'm so happy to be learning from you every day. Congratulations.
Hi, Otto. I want to just send you a heartfelt congratulations today. I know you often say, oh, we're just getting started. And that's true. But at the same time, I really appreciate this moment of pause to acknowledge all that you've done. I feel the impact personally. I see it here in my local community in Montreal. And I feel it globally through all of the wonderful people we get to meet who are doing such great work in the world and who feel inspired and supported and uplifted by the work. So thank you to the OD Network for creating this award and congratulations to you. It's so well deserved.
Dear Otto, congratulations on receiving the inaugural OD Network's Elevating Humanity Award. What a fitting celebration of all the work you have done in the world. I want to thank you personally for all of your gentle and wise teachings, how you've helped me to understand the role of compassion and of curiosity in making the change I want to see in the world, and for showing me the tools and the methods to actually have the confidence that if we put our hands on things and pay attention, we can actually bring about the change we want to see in the world. I've learned so much. You've opened my heart. You've opened my mind. I know I speak for many of us in the PI community and beyond when I say thank you, thank you, thank you. Such gratitude for all that you do, for all that you've created, for all that you bring into the world every day. Big hug. Love you.
And so it is now my absolute honor to invite Dr. Otto Scharmer to the virtual stage to accept the inaugural Elevating Humanity Award from the Organization Development Network and to say a few words to our community.
Otto, I'm going to take a few moments here to soak that in because you deserve it. How does it feel?
Well, I mean, I must say nobody prepared me for this moment. And I just thought, Bill, we would be meeting here for a fireside chat. That was the briefing that I got. So I must say I'm really speechless, touched, and don't really know what to say. Not just because of the words, but also from whom, I mean, starting with Ed Schein and Peter, so my mentors here over the years, from whom I learned so much, and all the way to many people I don't know. I mean, maybe I know the name. I have never met them in person. To my dear and close collaborators in the end. So, yeah, I'm moved. I'm a little bit speechless, and I'm also aware of that. In reality, So this award is given to an individual, but in reality, whatever you do in your life, it's a web of collaborative and loving and co-creating relationships. So it's, of course, never just an individual, but it's a whole network of these relationships that operate from a different place. So I'm also very aware of that and humbled by the honor I'm receiving here, or that is kind of handed over to me in part, but also really in part, I think, for the entire work that the Presencing Institute is in support of.
Absolutely, Otto. And I'm not sure how I fell into your network, but you know, if anyone's wondering why I'm the one talking to Otto, I'm not sure either. I feel like the lucky one who won the lotto. I met you, Otto, a few years ago at the PI. We meditated together. We did social presencing, theater. We did all kinds of wonderful, intuitive, insightful exercises that I never did before. And I found myself rolling around on the floor thinking, oh, my employer is paying for this. That was the first thought that went through my head. And of course, I was still downloading. I was still stuck in my own head. But by the end of that time together, you transformed not only my work and my research agenda, but also my life. And that is what I hear from everyone that I've ever worked with. And thinking about you and getting ready for today to speak with you, I thought, I kind of tried to imagine, where was Otto Scharmer when this idea came to him? What were you doing? I really want to know, where were you? How old were you? What was going on in your life? I'm just so curious. I know others are too.
Well, it is a great question. And so the answer is not, I mean, I can think of a number of situations. So just to touch a point, I think there is like seeding and soil, and then there's when the idea is really, or an intuition is crystallizing. Mm-hmm. And on the seed and soil, personally, I grew up as the son of farmers, and my parents, some 60 years ago, shifted from conventional paradigm to regenerative agriculture, mm-hmm. and living in that community. And, where you see Earth not just as a resource, right, but as a living system, as a living being, even as a living ecosystem that you are in service of. And then also the whole community aspect and kind of the deeper spiritual dimension of regenerative agriculture that you can cultivate or can begin to pay attention to. That certainly influenced me. Then I became an activist, right, in the anti-nuke movement and in the green movement, the peace movement a little later. And I felt that when I was on the streets, really with my generation, really, it wasn't anything special back then. I felt that we all were animated by a felt sense of possibility that I didn't need to explain to the person next to me. But what animated us was that shared sense of possibility that the reality, our social reality, could be actually quite different than what we see. And so that was another formative experience, I would say. And so today, the word presencing, right, is sensing and actualizing the highest future possibility. So I think it is quite a common experience, right, for grassroots movements, for example. So it's nothing extraordinary. It's quite ordinary to some degree that is already happening sometimes in particular pockets of our life, but we are not really paying attention to it. Mm-hmm. And then later, I think, so that's kind of on the seeding, right? The seed and the soil. And I would say when it started to crystallize, I remember that one particular situation was with when I did with my colleague Joe Jaworski an interview project. We met with Brian Arthur, kind of who back then was heading the economics group at the Santa Fe Institute. We met with him at Xerox Park, and he was really sharing with us this concept of there's two types of cognition, right? There's like you use existing frames and modules, you basically download the frameworks you already have, or you move into a deeper, so a deep cognition cycle that he described as observe, 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 retreat and reflect, allow the inner knowing to emerge, and then act in an instant. So, and when I listened to that, right? So in my mind, so I really felt kind of that was.
That's okay. Forget it. I want to hear it. Well, go ahead. Listen to it.
There we go.
In my mind, I felt like that was articulating a deeper pattern that I have heard many other people sharing before. And and then on the way back, kind of, I drew down kind of the sequence, right, around the graphic. But it was really Brian kind of who put words around that first. And then the next moment kind of where kind of so that began to more crystallize was in sitting with Francesco Varela, the late cognitive scientist in Paris, in his lab, and interviewing him around what he called the blind spot of Western science, which is how we access experience. And he basically crystallized these methodologies, the three methodologies that he found, much inspired by phenomenology, into three gestures of the core process of becoming aware. So that's how he called that. And he said it's suspension, redirection, and letting go. Suspending our old habits of judgment, redirecting the perspective kind of from one to the other. So in his case, it was object to source. And then the letting go and letting come, right? Which is really the letting go as the foundation of something new to emerge. And when he went through that, he described that, I realized I had seen this thing many times, but in groups. I saw it in groups. When you help a group process to go through, that's what you do, right? So, I mean, suspending judgment means, so we start to listen to each other a little bit at least, right? And when we are lucky, the redirection is then, when we are lucky, we move into a conversation where I see the situation through your angle, right? Not just from my own perspective. And the third one, kind of the letting go, that's really when we are lucky and something new is emerging. So basically, that's what we do as OD people, right? But he was describing it as a shift of consciousness, right? A shift of awareness on the side of the individual. And when I heard that, I immediately saw in front of my eye like a matrix, because you can describe the suspension, redirection, letting go on the level of the individual, but I saw it on the level of the teams, right? And then, of course, when you look at how organizational structure is evolving, take like Mintzberg's works and so on. So you see immediately the same gestures there, and then also in coordination. So that's basically so Theory U is a method, a set of methods and tools, and it's a framework, right? The framework part is basically this matrix that I just described, right? So levels of consciousness on the one hand, and on the other axis, basically systems levels, individual, team, organization, and larger systems. So that was another key moment. And I would say a third key moment was when I talked with Peter, right? So he was just sharing his remarks before. So as part of my interview, I did an interview with him early on when I arrived at MIT. And he talked about that he was just returning from Hong Kong from a person, Master Nan, who really integrated, a revered person in China who integrated Taoism, Confucianism, and also Shintoism, and not Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. And in his teaching, right? And Peter then asked him, so about the environmental crisis and, everything is going to hell. So, and then, so what is it we need to do, right? And then he was just shaking his hand, right? He's shaking his hand in disagreement, right? And then Peter stopped himself and said, and asked him, so what do you think? And then so Master Nan, he responded, he said, well, that's not the real problem, right? In reality, there's only one real problem in the world, and that is the reintegration of matter and mind. The reintegration of matter and mind. And when Peter shared that, right, so that was a real kind of deep experience for myself, because what I saw in that moment was, okay, so on the surface level, we have environmental, we have inequality, we have all these other crises going on. But on a deeper level, so how can we conceive of social reality more from a source dimension, right? So maybe what we see manifesting, right, as the environmental crisis, the social crisis, and so forth, the spiritual crisis, it is originating from a source that we are not paying attention to. And at the source level, we have maybe an issue of reintegration, matter and mind. But so on the level of the collective, right, on the level of social field, what really does that mean? What does reintegrating matter and mind mean? And so that's then what I asked him, and he basically said, well, reintegrate. So systems thinking, the essence of systems thinking really is closing the feedback loop between our collective behavior, really, and our ways of making sense. So that and what we have today is a decoupling of what we do and what we think, right? Our sense making on the level of the collective. So that was kind of reintegrating matter and mind, and what really does that do? What does that mean on the level of the collective, on the level of social fields? That was, I would say, kind of that was a very profound seeding of that question that I'm still pursuing, right? And so you could say, so writing Theory U, writing these other books, it's just in pursuit of that question that, got activated in that conversation. So it's, those were significant moments where something got seeded and activated. Yes, there was something there before, but it wasn't activated, right? And through this conversations, really, right? These were generative conversations with Francesco, with Brian Arthur, with Peter. Those were really what we would say kind of generative dialogue or kind of collective, a conversation where together you reach a deeper level of awareness and co-creativity. And those were moments that really opened up this field of inquiry that we are talking about today.
That's excellent.
And so in many ways, right, so what I'm doing is really not new, right, in the in OD and so on. I mean, when you look at Kurt Lewin's and Ed Schein's work and so on, but the one new thing you could say certainly is to bring more clear language around the vertical spine, right? The different levels, really not only thinking about systems in terms of structure, process, and mindset, but really about the different levels of awareness and consciousness that are foundational for enacting certain patterns. So if you want to change certain patterns, you need to shift the level of awareness that we are operating from. So those are like practical implications, but it all got seeded in these moments.
Well, I want to jump in and let the participants in on a moment of embarrassment, confusion for myself when I was learning from you. And it went something like this. I was a young, eager scholar, and I was looking into Zen Buddhism and consciousness, and I wanted to study all of this. And I had done research on the cognitive psychology and this and that. And I felt like I knew enough about it. And then you sort of, in not so many words, put your finger on it, and you said, but can you really know with language? Can you really know conceptually what we're talking about. And there is that side of consciousness, that conceptualization of reality. But there's this whole deeper level of sensing and intuition, which really requires a letting go of ego, and in doing so, seeing that. And so one of the ways that I look at that theory U and the U itself, it's a little way that I think about it, and it's very Buddhist, is that the U is like dying to the world and letting go of everything you have, what the Buddhists would call a big death, letting go of all your conceptualization, coming back and reintegrating with matter, which is earth, right? Coming back home. But there's something very special about your approach. You don't just dwell in that space. It does something that it's sort of like a springboard where you go deep enough, you get to this point where it's just, you can't hold back and you're ready to rapid prototype. And one of the things I noticed in my cohort was people had a hard time dwelling in that space. They could get to that space, but it was very difficult for them to stay in that non-conceptual space. You have a bunch of activities that I would suggest everybody looks at on the Presencing Institute's website. We'll put all that information on this video later. But one of my favorite ones that I want to fold back inward on you, if it's okay, is a rapid journaling exercise. And in this rapid journaling exercise, just to tee this up for everyone, Otto will ask questions and provide prompts, but you can't think about your answer too long. You've got to answer quickly, sort of like a subjective recall, whatever's on the tip of your tongue. So I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. All right, so I want to make sure I ask this right. So I wrote down the questions as I remember them. And of course, I'm asking you this, Otto, not as Otto Scharmer, the award winner, which is, I know, not how you see yourself, but Otto Scharmer, the son of farmers, the man, the human being. If you were to look at your life right now and what's happening for you in this moment, as if you were looking from a helicopter, taking a very deep, full picture view, considering everything that's going on, COVID, the attacks on the Capitol, global warming, all of this, what is happening for you right now?
Well, what's happening right now is, I think, a manifestation of something I felt for a long time. And so the feeling that comes with it is, this is the moment we have been born for, I have been born for, and this is the moment to show up.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, so we're going to fast forward. You know where we're going. I'm not sure the attendees know, but let's fast forward to the final moments of your life, your very final moments. And you are talking to your future self, and your future self has advice for you. What would that future self say to you right now?
The future self might say, keep going, pay attention. The future is already there amongst you and around you. And pay attention to what's emerging from within.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, so now what we're going to do is travel together to your childhood. So you might imagine yourself as a little boy on the farm or wherever you were growing up. Maybe you were, 5 years old. If you could share advice with young Otto, what advice would you give him? What would the you of right now give him? And this is especially, as I wrote this question, it was a little selfish because I have 3 kids. And I was very curious what you would say to yourself and also say to a child.
All right. So this is the other way around, right? Like we usually do it. So
yeah, it is.
So I would say for all important decisions in life, the most important activity is that you listen to multiple voices, but in particular to the voice of your heart, because your heart already knows. And that when you take steps, you need to learn from the feedback you get. And you need to be tolerant to a distance between what you believe is possible and what actually happens. And that can be a very wide distance. And the important thing is to never give up. And the other thing I would say is to change the world, you don't need many people. You just need a few people who you really connect closely with, because that's the starting point. No one can do it alone. You can't change yourself alone. You can't change the world alone. You need to connect. That's the foundation for everything. It doesn't need to be a big group, but it needs to be a good relationship. And that's the foundation. If you have that foundation, anything is possible.
That's wonderful. Now, this is another question I have, and this is really for anybody who is young and starting out, and they're getting pushed to the point where they might want to give up, and they persevere nonetheless. Sometimes people look at a big, thick book like Theory U, and they would say, that must have been easy for Otto to just bang that out and create it. And it may be so that you were able to see those patterns and put that together in your mind, which is quite frankly what makes you brilliant in my eyes. But I wonder if you could share maybe a time where you met resistance, where your ideas were debated, were critiqued, perhaps unfairly, or you felt that you weren't understood. Can you think back to a time maybe early on when you encountered resistance? What was that? Yeah,
you mean most of the time, right? So, which is like a reflection on poor communication. So I would, I don't know. I think kind of the experience of trying to communicate something that you can feel, but that's not really quite coming across. That's that's very familiar to me, right? I have had that many times. And as you all know, kind of the more you go into the academic realm, the more widespread that experience can be. I would say that's certainly what I felt. So where I felt more in understanding is when you start to work with people who actually go through processes like that, who in their life experience have the experience of operating in different ways, which is not just subject-object consciousness, but kind of moving into, doesn't need to be a flow experience, but into a co-creative field one way or another, or going through a forced upon experience of letting go and letting come, right? Many managers, that's happening in organization, in layoffs and many others. So we are in roles where this letting go and letting come is forced upon us. And we are just in a macro version of that right now. I think all these experiences prepare you for a deeper view of reality, because it is giving you a body of experience that will be resonant with Theory U. And Theory U, in essence, is something very simple, right? So if you want to change a system, you need to change relationships. And if you want to change relationships, you need to shift the inner place from that you operate. And that is, for those who operate in these different fields, quite familiar, right? And for others, it is very abstract and alien. So, yes, I felt that disconnect many times. And what I should have said to your earlier question is, where's the real source of theory U? One of them is being thrown time and again in practical application situations, really working as a consultant, right, in situations and trying to be helpful and knowing that I don't know nothing that's useful here. So my only chance is listening, right? When you know nothing that is of relevance, the only chance to be helpful in the situation is to be a good listener. So in that way, that was the real school. I mean, all of the tools, all of the methods came out of practical application situations. And that's kind of, so learning from the social field as a teacher, right? Reality is the teacher, right? It's not like an abstract theory. And what I try to develop with theory U is really a theory. I remember kind of so then for a while, so I actually then moved out of the traditional academia and kind of really focus more on applied work. And then when you put up the slide, right, with the different levels of theory U and so on, and then basically let people share their stories, right? And I remember one of them, so he was a very experienced practitioner, an OD person, with a lot of experience, but he didn't participate in the discussion. So after the session, I went to him and said, so what do you think? And he said, well, it wasn't, so he was somehow moved a little bit, but said, it wasn't really totally new what you said. I just didn't know that I know. I just didn't know that I know. And that for me as an action researcher, that's the highest goal, right? I don't want to create the next fancy concept that makes people confused, right? I want to create distinctions that help people to illuminate their best experience, right? And kind of have a more direct access to the deeper and the more subtle level of their own experience. And that's what theory should be doing. And that's where I would say in focusing really on, so as an action researcher, what is true, right? The truth criteria is not only can you observe it, but can you create it, right? What you talk about, can you create that reality? And if not, maybe you don't know, right? At least it's not knowledge for action. And I think if you redefine your research focus that way, then the people who become relevant for you are really the change makers in the field. And less people in the realm who are very remote, kind of from the praxis and the front line of transformation of change. So that was really something that helped me to minimize my frustration, which of course is also my own lack of being able to. So that book took me 10 years, right? So, maximize the learning from practical applications, practical experiments.
Well, I have to tell you, one of the things that was really hard in terms of listening, think about listening. I really love that word, and I could get lost in listening to you, and I know that other people can too. And as we looked at this congratulations video where we had several people, and believe me, Otto, the line was long to congratulate you, and it created a whole conundrum of having to say, oh, we can't take any more people. The actual video is about a half an hour long. So whatever you're touching inside people's minds and hearts is on fire. And I want to thank you for the influence you've had on me. I look forward to learning and listening and you know, applying things and testing them out, and continuing to watch you. It's been a real pleasure. And I think what we're going to do right now is I'm getting the hook, so to speak, to wrap up. Do you have any parting thoughts for this group of OD practitioners? Maybe one easy way they can get started right away in learning about your work or getting into the trenches. What's something that you might suggest to them?
Well, I would say, so if you're an OD practitioner these days, that's a very good place to be because you're at the front line of transformation. And I think the next level of theory, the next level of concept that we need really needs to be grounded in these experiences. If you're remote on campus, right, with all the big titles and all the big books and libraries, you are not well equipped to be part of that next wave of transformation, making sense of that and developing methods and tools that are helpful for that. So I think that's a perfect place to be. And as we all know, OD, I mean, so I think at Shine, I heard him saying that once, kind of the problem with organizations, it's like too small for the big problems and too big for the small problems, right? The same thing to nation states, right? So there is, so we are, and if you're like coming in and out of an organization, you're in this privileged role. And we know all organizations have the same problem, right? They're inside their own bubble, right? The bigger the institution is, the bigger their problem. So we are like in this privileged role where we can offer windows maybe into the larger ecosystem, right? And helping organizations to co-evolve with the larger ecosystems and in relationship to the profound disruptions and societal changes that we are at the beginning of this century, of this decade, and that will, develop very dynamically kind of throughout this decade or two, and set the stage for the remainder of the century. So I think the place we are in and kind of the access you have puts you in a place where we, if we work together, if we make sense together, are in a very privileged role to really share the knowledge, what we are learning, and making that accessible to others. And that's really why we co-founded the Presencing Institute, right? So it's an action research community for making sense together, and kind of it's like, hey, there's something happening on this planet right now, and something that needs to happen. And it's not happening by itself, right? It will take a movement. It will take more people who really operate from purpose. And what I think what I really are dreaming of is a new type of university that would make this, what we all are learning in our various projects, available to the next generation of change makers, which usually does not happen in our normal universities. So to prototype that, how that can work, and then make it accessible to the whole educational system, that it can be replicated there, as we have done with other stuff in a small way with ULab and so forth. That's really what we try to do. And if you feel some resonance with that, so go to presencing.org. That's the website. There's a forum coming up. Peter was talking about that. We have like free online offerings also through the edX platform around the year, really, and the Gaia cycle. And we are just at the beginning of really building the deeper research capacity, the collective research capacity that I think we all hold pieces of, but that hasn't really put together as a knowledge creating infrastructure.
Well, that is a beautiful send off for this session. Hopefully, everybody learns something. People here for theory, for practice, for having their minds and consciousness stretched. This is fantastic, Otto. Thank you. I want to give a special shout out to one of my students, Ron Banerjee, who at Penn State put that video together, that introduction video together, in I think about 4 days. So thank you for that. Thank you also to a colleague of mine who I know just absolutely loves, Susan Good. I'm going to invite you in here if that's all right.